Hello everyone, today I'm back to continue sharing with you the story of the single mother, Tusan. I hope you enjoy the video. Ever since the fire happened, it felt like half of Hai's world had collapsed. Tusan was rushed into the recovery room with severe injuries, weak breathing, and fell into a deep coma. The doctors said she might wake up, but no one knew when. That one sentence stabbed straight into Hai's heart every night, making him unable to leave the hospital even for an hour. He sat beside her bed, his hand always holding hers. Every evening, when the hospital lights dimmed, he would pull the chair closer, rest his head on the bed frame, and quietly tell her stories from their time together. He told her about the first time she clumsily tried baking and failed but still grinned, about the night they took Ivy out for ice cream and the little girl laughed so hard she choked, about their trip to Korea and the promise the three of them made to return one day. He spoke about every little memory, as if the moment he stopped talking, the thin thread connecting them would break. But Tusan still lay there, heartbreakingly silent. Ever since her mother was hospitalized, Ivy clung to Hai more than ever. At first the little girl begged to visit her mom every day, whispering softly, "Mom. Mommy," but each time she entered the hospital room and saw her mother lying motionless, eyes closed, tubes everywhere, she grew terrified and clutched Hai's hand, sobbing in hiccups. Seeing that, Hai's mother couldn't stand it and decided to take Ivy home to care for her properly so the child wouldn't live in constant panic. Every night, Ivy hugged the teddy bear her mother had sewn for her, lying awake on the bed at Grandma's house with wide-open eyes. When Hai's mother stroked her hair and asked why she wasn't asleep yet, Ivy whispered one sentence that made every adult's chest tighten. "I'm scared that Mommy will wake up and I won't be there." When Hai heard his mother recount those words, he could only pinch the bridge of his nose to keep from breaking down. He wanted to gather both mother and daughter into his arms and tell them everything would be alright, that Tusan would wake up, but even he wasn't sure he had enough faith to finish that sentence. Every time his shift ended, he rushed to the hospital. He wiped her face, combed her hair, adjusted her blanket so she wouldn't get cold. He even brought the flour pastries she used to love and placed them in a glass jar by the window, like a tiny reminder that she had to wake up to taste them. And so the days passed, slow and painful. Every night before dozing off at her bedside, he whispered a small plea. "Tusan, please open your eyes and look at me, just for one moment." But the only reply was the steady rhythm of the ventilator echoing in the cold white room. After the fire, all that remained of Tusan's bakery were charred walls, the smell of smoke clinging to every brick like an unerasable scar. The firefighters arrived, drafted reports, sealed the scene, but when the flames died, all that could be seen was ash and collapsed beams. The glass display case, the oven, every wooden table she cherished, all had been reduced to burnt fragments. To support the investigation, Hai had to constantly go back to the bakery. Standing in the ruins crushed him, worrying about the destroyed shop while the woman he loved lay unconscious in the hospital. On days when it drizzled, raindrops hit the blackened tiles and released a harsh burnt smell that made him feel suffocated. Still, he stood there, answering investigators' questions, signing documents, reviewing the wiring, all for Tusan. By day he worked at the ruined bakery, by night he rushed back to the hospital. Sometimes he was so exhausted that the moment he sat down, he fell asleep with his head resting on her hand. But the slightest sound, a doctor entering, a monitor blinking, would jolt him upright instantly. While Hai was still busy with the investigation team, a strange woman appeared at the bakery. She looked to be in her 50s, dressed simply, but her posture was upright and her eyes filled with tension. The moment she saw the devastation, she froze. She covered her mouth with her hand, voice trembling. "My God, how did it end up like this? Tusan, where is she? Who owns the shop? Is anyone here?" A neighbor recognized her and rushed out to explain that the bakery had burned down and the young owner was severely injured and now in the hospital. Hearing that, the woman nearly dropped her bag. She frantically asked about Tusan's condition, which hospital she was taken to, how serious her injuries were, whether anyone was with her. Her voice broke as if she had just heard news about her own child. Please tell me which hospital she's in." No one knew who she was. They only saw her hurry toward the bus stop, clearly desperate to get to the hospital. Meanwhile, in the sterile white ICU room, Tusan still lay motionless, her fragile body swallowed by a long, unresponsive sleep. The ventilator beeped steadily, her breaths faint, and the pale light reflected off her skin, making the whole room feel even colder. She had no idea her bakery, the dream she poured years into, had turned into ashes. No idea that Hai was running himself ragged. No idea that a mysterious woman was urgently searching for her with a secret no one yet understood. All she had was Hai's hand, always holding hers whenever he returned to the hospital, and his whisper, desperate yet hopeful. "Don't worry, even if the bakery burned down, even if everything falls apart. I'll rebuild it all for you. Just, please wake up." The mysterious woman arrived at the hospital in the late afternoon, just as the last rays of sunlight were glinting off the long glass panels of the hallway. She stood in front of the recovery room door, her hand gripping the strap of her bag as if letting go would cause her heart to fall apart with it. Through the frosted glass, she could see Tusan lying motionless among countless machines and tangled floor lines. Every breath the girl took was supported by a ventilator, her face was pale, her once soft hair now just a few thin strands falling across the pillow. The sight made the woman raise a trembling hand to her mouth to hold back a choked sob. She didn't dare enter. She simply stood there, leaning lightly against the wall as though her legs no longer had the strength to hold her up. People walking past in the hallway glanced at her, but no one knew who she was. Her face showed a familiarity toward Tusan, but not the kind a close relative would have. It was the familiarity of someone who had carried a quiet torment for years and was now forced to face the shadow of it again. Every time a doctor or nurse entered the room, she stepped aside, head lowered to avoid attention. Clearly, she wanted to do something, yet lacked the courage to step through that door. Hai had just returned from the bakery, his hands still marked with scratches from clearing debris. As he reached the hallway, he saw the silhouette of the woman outside the room. He paused, puzzled. She wasn't part of his family. She wasn't anyone from Tusan's relatives he had ever met. But the moment he approached, the woman quickly turned away. She didn't greet him, didn't ask a question, she simply backed up a few steps as if trying to avoid being noticed. Hai gave a polite nod and went into the room. The woman stood less than 2 meters from the door, yet still didn't utter a word. When she heard the chair scrape softly inside and Hai whisper, "San. I'm back," her shoulders trembled ever so slightly. She bit her lip, her fingers tightening around her bag strap until her knuckles turned white. She stayed like that for a long time, silently repeating something to herself, though no one could hear. Only her reddened eyes remained fixed on Tusan's figure behind the glass, full of sorrow and a nameless fear. Eventually, the woman stepped back, once, then again. She didn't enter, but she didn't leave either. She hovered at the junction of the hallway, quietly watching. As if she was waiting for a chance. Or waiting for someone else to speak first. Inside the room, Hai continued murmuring updates about the bakery, unaware that outside the glass, a pair of worried, haunted eyes were following every movement. Who was this woman? How did she know about Tusan, and the fire? Why was she afraid to step inside yet unable to walk away? Meanwhile, Tusan lay there, comatose, unaware that a hidden truth was creeping closer to her life, now just a few breaths away behind the hospital door. That night, when the hospital had quieted down, Hai returned to the ICU after a long day running back and forth. His hands were covered in soot, and his dress shirt bore smudges of burnt debris. As soon as he pushed open the door and saw Tusan still lying there, stable, unchanged, he let out a soft exhale of relief. He washed his hands thoroughly at the sink, then pulled his familiar chair close to her bed. Seeing her pale face made his throat tighten, but he forced a smile, as though his happiness might reach her somehow. "San. I went back to the bakery again today," he said, his voice low but gentle. "Seeing the ruins, it really hurts. But I promise you, once you wake up, we'll start again. The new bakery will be prettier, bigger, you'll have all the space you want to make the sweets you love." He told her every little thing that had happened, as if documenting life itself for her, piece by piece. I met the investigators today. They asked a lot of questions. I don't even remember half of what I said. He sighed softly. But don't worry. I'll handle everything. You just need to wake up. His voice faltered for a moment. He brushed back the loose strands of hair from her forehead, so gently that it hurt him more than her. I didn't get to visit Ivy today. Mom said she misses you so much. She keeps hugging that teddy bear you made and asking, Daddy, when is Mommy coming home? Hai closed his eyes briefly, gripping her hand just a little tighter. If you don't wake up soon. I don't know how to answer her anymore. The room dimmed, leaving only the steady rhythm of the ventilator filling the silence. Hai leaned back slightly in the chair, still holding her cold hand between his warm ones. He kept talking endlessly, as if stopping even for a moment would let his fear swallow him whole. You know, I kept the bakery's signboard. It's completely burned, but a few letters are still there. I'll restore it, keep the same name. So when you wake up, your dream will still be waiting. After a long while, his voice grew faint, hoarse from exhaustion. San, if you can hear me, even the slightest movement. I'd be so happy. But the only response was the painful, echoing silence. Hai lowered his head and placed his warm hand over hers, whispering a promise only she could hear. I'll wait for you, no matter how long. Out in the hallway, the mysterious woman still stood at the far corner, watching through the glass, with a face full of unspoken worry and a fear no one could name. Night had grown late, and the ICU was so quiet that even distant footsteps echoed clearly through the halls. Hai sat beside Tusan's bed, his eyes bloodshot after a full day running back and forth between the burned bakery and the hospital. He wanted to stay awake just a little longer to keep talking to her, but his eyelids kept sinking no matter how hard he tried to fight it. Eventually, exhausted, Hai drifted forward and fell asleep beside her bed, his hand still holding hers, as if it was a habit his body refused to let go of. The faint warmth from her fingers, fragile as it was, still made him feel like he hadn't lost her completely. Half asleep, he murmured a few broken words. San. I'm here, don't leave me, okay? Then he slipped into a weary sleep. Not long after, his hand tightened around hers without him realizing it. At that same moment, Tusan's heart monitor suddenly jumped, emitting a sharper beat than usual. It wasn't an emergency alarm, but it was a noticeable irregular change. The indicator light flickered, signaling a slight response in her physical activity. The sound jolted Hai awake instantly. He shot up, staring at the monitor, heart pounding. Her heart rate had gone up, just a little, but more clearly than in all the days before. Hai froze, staring at their intertwined hands, then at her face. A spark of hope rushed through him like a small flame piercing the darkness. San? Can you hear me? He asked, his voice trembling. But all he saw was the faintest twitch, so slight it might have been an illusion. Then her body relaxed again, and her vitals slowly returned to their stable line. Hai stood there, both hands shaking, unsure whether to hold tighter or let go. He called for the nurse and explained what the machine had detected. She checked everything and said, "It's very slight, but it's a good sign. It could mean her subconscious reflexes are starting to respond." Hai nodded repeatedly, as if someone had just lifted a boulder off his chest. After the nurse left, he sat down again and gently placed his hand over hers. San. I know you heard me. Hold on a little longer, just a little more. Out in the hallway, the mysterious woman flinched when the machine beeped. She stepped closer, standing right against the glass panel, her eyes full of tension as she peered inside. When she saw the heart rate steady again, she let out a shaky breath, but she still didn't leave. Her gaze stayed fixed on Tusan and on Hai, as though she was trying to untangle a knot in her chest but lacked the courage to walk through that door. Inside the room, Hai sat holding her hand tightly, his eyes unable to hide the growing hope. Just the smallest sign. But to him, it felt like a miracle. That morning, Hai hurried home for a quick shower. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw Ivy sitting on the sofa, hugging the teddy bear tightly to her chest. Her big round eyes, usually bright, looked dim and tired. Hai's mother gently stroked the little girl's hair. "She misses her mom terribly," she said softly. All night she kept turning over and calling for Tusan. Hearing that, Hai froze. He crouched down and pulled his daughter into his arms. "Ivy, do you want to visit mommy?" he asked quietly. The girl didn't speak. She just nodded, hard, tears immediately spilling down her cheeks. That one nod alone was enough to break Hai's heart. He carried Ivy to the car. On the way to the hospital, she stayed unusually silent, clutching the teddy bear like she was holding on to her last bit of hope. When they reached the ICU hallway, Ivy stopped in her tracks, taking tiny hesitant steps. Through the glass, she saw her mother lying there, and instantly clung to Hai's hand, trembling. "Daddy, does mommy hurt?" she whispered. Hai swallowed hard. "She's sleeping, but she'll wake up. Go closer to mommy, she misses you so much." Ivy walked into the room, her little legs shaking. She placed the teddy bear on Tusan's chest, then climbed onto the chair beside her. "Mommy," Ivy called softly. "I'm here. Please open your eyes and look at me, just a little bit." No answer came back, but that tiny voice seemed to echo throughout the room. Then suddenly, a small miracle happened. Tusan's little finger, the pinky on the hand resting on the bedsheet, twitched. So slight, like a breeze brushing past, but enough to make the monitor jump again. Hai noticed it first. He shot up from his chair, heart pounding. "San. You heard Ivy, didn't you?" Ivy didn't understand exactly what happened, but seeing her dad react made her panic, and she cried out louder. "Mommy! Mommy! I'm right here!" And at that moment, Tusan's eyelids fluttered. Not fully opening, just the faintest movement, but far more than anything before. Her face shifted slightly, as if she were struggling to claw her way out of a deep, endless darkness. Ivy burst into tears, gripping her mother's hand with her tiny fingers. "Mommy, don't sleep anymore. I miss you so much." Hai stood beside them, eyes red, his trembling hand brushing Ivy's hair while squeezing Tusan's hand as if begging her to return. Right then, a nurse walked in. She glanced at the monitor and exclaimed softly. "She's responding well. This could be the beginning of reflex recovery." The mysterious woman in the hallway had seen everything. The moment Ivy called her mother, the woman covered her mouth with both hands as tears streamed down her face faster than she could wipe them. She stepped back, trembling, trying to hide her reaction. The look she gave Tusan wasn't just worry, it was the kind of pain born from years of carrying a buried sorrow. Inside the room, Ivy continued holding her mother's hand, her voice choked with emotion. "Mommy, it's Ivy. Please open your eyes, look at me, just for a moment." And Tusan's eyelids twitched once more. This time, stronger than before. After the mysterious woman left the hospital, the hallway returned to its usual silence. Inside the room, Hai remained seated beside the bed. Ivy nestled against him, her curious eyes fixed on her mother, while the teddy bear lay neatly on Tusan's chest. Hai gently brushed his daughter's hair. "Ivy, talk to mommy again. She can hear you." Ivy nodded, then leaned close to her mother's face. "Mommy, it's Ivy, please don't sleep anymore, okay?" As she spoke, her tiny hand rested on the back of Tusan's hand. And at that exact moment, Tusan's hand trembled. Very faintly. But enough for both father and daughter to gasp. Hai shot up from his seat, his heart almost leaping out of his chest. "San? You heard Ivy, didn't you? Try to open your eyes." Ivy cried out excitedly. "Daddy!" Mommy moved. She really did. On the monitor, Tusan's heart rate increased again, still steady, but with more strength than before. A faint warmth seemed to return to her cheeks. Her eyelids, silent for so many days, fluttered once more and then relaxed, as if trying to escape the endless darkness holding her down. Hai leaned closer, his voice shaking to a whisper. "San, it's me, look at me, just for a moment." And then, a thin line of light appeared. Tusan's eyelids slowly parted. Not fully, just a tiny slit, but enough for the bright hospital light to reflect in eyes that had been asleep far too long. Her lashes trembled softly, as though struggling to focus on the world in front of her. Ivy burst into tears. Mommy opened her eyes. Mommy opened her eyes, Daddy. Hai dropped to his knees beside the bed, his trembling hands lifting hers carefully. San, can you hear me? Tusan's eyes opened a little wider. Her gaze was cloudy, as if it took her a long time to recognize the shapes before her. Her lips moved, not forming words yet, a faint breath escaped, but to Hai, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. Just then, the doctor and nurse entered after receiving the alert from the monitor. The doctor checked her pupils with a light, held her hand, then nodded. She's regaining consciousness. This is a very good sign. For now, let her rest and continue monitoring. Hai lowered his head onto her shoulder, tears falling without him noticing. He squeezed her hand. San, you did so well. You came back to us. Ivy hugged her mother's arm, tears rolling down her cheeks but a tiny smile forming on her lips. Mommy, please don't sleep anymore. I missed you so much. Tusan blinked again, this time more clearly. As if she was trying with every bit of remaining strength to respond to her daughter's voice. Out in the hallway, the mysterious woman had returned just in time. She looked through from afar and froze when she saw Tusan's eyes open. Her hand trembled, and a single tear slipped down her cheek, this time a tear of relief mixed with terror and hope. She clutched her chest and took a deep breath, as if she had just witnessed a miracle she never dared to pray for. Her identity remained unknown. But one thing was certain. When Tusan opened her eyes, the woman's eyes reddened too. After that moment, the doctor asked that Tusan rest for a few more hours before they tried communicating again. Hai and Ivy sat beside her, refusing to leave even for a moment. Each time her eyelids fluttered, both their hearts nearly jumped out of their chests. By the afternoon, her breathing had steadied. Her eyes were clearer, not just a reflex anymore, but actual consciousness slowly returning. Hai leaned in, calling softly. San, can you hear me? Tusan blinked several times. She took in the white room, the dim lights, the steady beeping of the machines. Her expression was dazed, like someone waking from a dream so long that the soul hadn't caught up yet. She tried to speak, but only a faint whisper slipped out. Hai. Hai nodded quickly, tears in his eyes. I'm here. I'm right here with you. Ivy pressed close, shaking her mother's hand gently. Mommy. Look at me. Tusan glanced down and recognized Ivy's face. A faint light flickered in her eyes. Ivy. The little girl cried but smiled, leaning into her mother's hand. I missed you so much. Tusan tried to lift her hand to touch her daughter, but pain shot through her, and the movement came out weak and trembling. Hai quickly held her hand in place. You just woke up, don't push yourself. The doctor walked in at that moment, relief in his voice. Welcome back. Do you know where you are? Tusan blinked, lips trembling. I'm in the hospital? That's right. You were injured in the fire at your bakery, Hai said, voice soft but shaking. Tusan froze for a moment. She stared at Hai, then at her own hands, then at Ivy. A confused expression washed over her face. She slowly shook her head, every movement painful. Fire. What fire? I don't remember. Hai went rigid. Ivy stopped crying. The entire room fell silent. The doctor stepped closer, voice calm and reassuring. It's okay. Memory loss after trauma and prolonged coma is common. You may have forgotten parts of the event. We'll let you rest and keep monitoring. Hai held her hand tightly, voice quivering. San, you really don't remember anything? Not the bakery? Not baking that morning? She closed her eyes, trying to reach for the scattered pieces of memory. But there was only darkness. When she opened her eyes again, her confusion was overwhelming. I only remember, that morning, I took out the flour to start baking. Then, nothing. Hai's face tightened in pain. He forced a gentle smile to reassure her. It's okay. Your memories will come back. What matters is, you're awake. But deep inside, he knew that Tusan's memory held the key to understanding the cause of the fire, and to protecting her from whatever might be hidden behind it. Out in the hallway, the mysterious woman stood there again. When she heard the doctor say temporary memory loss, her hand tightened around her bag, and her entire body stiffened. In her eyes appeared not only worry, but a deep fear, as if Tusan forgetting something was both a blessing and a terrible danger. She stepped back quickly and disappeared down the hallway before anyone noticed her presence. Inside the room, Tusan looked at Hai, her voice fragile as a child's. Hai, what happened to me? Hai squeezed her hand, but in his eyes, a storm was beginning to rise. The fire, the missing memories, the stranger's presence, and the mysterious hospital payments. Everything had suddenly become more confusing than ever.
Xin chào mọi người, rất vui gặp lại mọi người trong video hôm nay của mình. Hôm nay mình tiếp tục đưa đến cho mọi người câu chuyện về Tiểu San. Sau khi vụ hỏa hoạn xảy ra thì Tiểu San đã rơi vào hôn mê sâu. Người phụ nữ bí ẩn lại tiếp tục xuất hiện. Bà đã bí mật thanh toán toàn bộ viện phí cho Tiểu San. Rốt cuộc bà là ai? Và liệu rằng người phụ nữ bí ẩn này có phải mẹ ruột của Tiểu San hay không? Thì mời mọi người cùng đón xem ở video tiếp theo. Và hy vọng rằng Tiểu San sẽ sớm phục hồi lại trí nhớ và quay lại cuộc sống bình yên như hàng ngày. Và mong muốn rằng mọi người sẽ vẫn yêu thích Tiểu San và cùng động viên cô để cô vượt qua khó khăn lần này. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở trong video tiếp theo. Rất vui được chia sẻ những câu chuyện bổ ích đến cho mọi người. Tạm biệt mọi người nha.